The Batman is a perfect film. The cinematography, the symbolism, and the inspired passion behind it. The sound design, the score, the writing, the structure. Every aspect in it makes it a cohesive, beautiful piece that has made it into perfection. And in this video, I want to investigate how it achieved that. Specifically in this video of this series, I'll be covering the symbolism in the film and how it relates to the plot and characters overall. Before we jump into the video today, I would like to talk about the eBay page Big Brush Films. Have you found it difficult to find cheap films? Well, this video's sponsor will certainly be able to meet those wants and needs. Through my eBay link below, you can find the eBay seller Big Brush Films, who offers wonderful deals on films like The Shining or Dune, both in 4K. By treating yourself or someone you love to an early Christmas present of Goodfellas only for £3 or $3.90, through the link below you can finally get these titles at a low price while supporting me. I'm very passionate about being able to purchase films even if you don't have a lot of money, so this sponsor really fits those tenets and those ideals. Through the link below you can finally get these titles at a low price while supporting me. You'll also be supporting a small business, as Big Brush Films offers their collection of films with a 100% rating from 11,000 users, all on eBay with no corporate influence at all. Thank you to eBay and Big Brush Films, and thank you very much to anyone who considers purchasing anything from the link below. It really means a lot to me. And thank you for just watching the video and just being here in general. Obviously this isn't mandatory at all. I just appreciate you guys being here. But yeah, thank you guys so much. Thank you eBay, and thank you Big Brush Films. Alright, let's get into the video. The subway station fight scene. Many people perhaps believe that the subway fight scene is a simple scene, only existing to serve us with a way to understand Batman and how Bruce Wayne has buried himself behind his trauma, fighting criminals as if they are the ones that are directly responsible for his parents' murder. Although this is certainly the case, I thoroughly believe it represents more than that, and I have a lot of evidence to suggest that it does. The main thesis that I have for this scene representing more and being larger in relation to the film is that it represents the entirety of the film. Through the scene, we see how Gotham has become corrupted by random violence, with the intention of these criminal acts being that of gaining popularity, respect within the gang, or simply to have fun in harming an innocent person. Parallels could be made to that of A Clockwork Orange, in fact, with Alex and his droogs doing it for even lesser reasons, simply because they enjoy it. The scum and criminal element is apparent, but there's one person remaining, a glimmer of hope to help the city become better: the young gang member. Throughout the entirety of this scene, we're almost taken through this gang stalking from his perspective, and whereas people may believe this is simply to humanize the scene, giving us empathy and a temporary protagonist to hold on to, I believe it's more than that. I believe this kid represents all of Gotham, the characters in the Batman, and the duality of good and evil within them and in the world of the film. Not only is the duality of crime and justice apparent in this scene, it shows that characters are flawed, self-conscious, and unsure of their own actions. The young gang member is constantly fearful of doing something wrong or bad, ultimately not giving in to his fellow gang members' demands and realizing the effect of crime not only on others, but on what he may become. This human element of doubt and that spark of good within the young member is also reflected in his costume and makeup. Notice how every gang member but him wears a full face of makeup, whereas he has only one half of his face painted. This may represent, and does in my opinion, the duality of his character and his lack of commitment towards crime and subsequently evil. No one in this world and in this film is one-sided, purely good, purely bad. Everyone is human and has many layers to them as a person and as a character. Also, notice how every gang member wears black and greys, whereas he wears brighter colors. This also represents the brightness within him, the potential to become a better person, unlike the other gang members that are within this darkness, this dark place, and perhaps will stay there. Another moment that was once confusing but now makes more sense is when the young gang member pauses at the end of the fight, staring at Batman. At first, we may believe this is simply a reflection of the character's emotions and initial fear, but I believe, once again, this represents the antagonism and dynamics between Batman, the protagonist, and the characters standing against him, the antagonists. The Riddler has an intense respect for him, so much so that he actually thinks he's working with the Batman.
We've been doing this together, you're part of this.
We didn't do anything together.
We did. What did we just do? I asked you to bring him the light, and you did. We're such a good team.
We're not a team.
I never could have gotten him out of there. I'm not physical. My strength is up here. I mean, I had all the pieces. I had the answers, but I didn't know how to make them listen. You gave me that.
I gave you nothing.
You showed me what was possible.
You showed me all it takes is fear and a little focused violence. You inspired me.
You're out of your goddamn mind.
The Riddler also is the only antagonist that calls him the Batman or just Batman through the entirety of the film, consistently.
The killer left this for the Batman. Apparently.
But we'll touch on that in a later part of this series. Oz, or the Penguin, also shows respect for the Batman, even if it is fake or simply a veneer to convince Batman that he's actually a good person.
Let me know if there's anything else I could do.
Catwoman obviously has a lot of respect for Batman, which is shown through their numerous scenes together, where they clearly understand why they are the way that they are and how they are very similar, only differing in what they choose to do with their trauma. Finally, Carmine doesn't show fear whatsoever until his last moments. Another major point that I want to touch upon is the structure and dynamics between the characters in this first scene, representing and summing up the rest of the film. There are other points in the film that do a similar thing, like Bruce and the mayor's son. I'll touch upon this in the next part. So let's break down more of the specifics and how the scene sums up and represents the themes, structure, and character relationships or dynamics in the entirety of the film. This is a metaphorical representation of him being in a dark place, finally stepping into the light and becoming more. This represents Batman's heavy and threatening presence and his effect on everybody in this film, apart from perhaps most of the GCPD, who simply see him as a freak. Perhaps this could represent him becoming more threatening, cunning, smart, and therefore intimidating as the film goes on. The rain is a visual and audio thing, telling us that it will be raining for most of the scenes, and this is the atmosphere that we need to get acclimatized to. The weather obviously representing the bleakness of the characters and Gotham as a whole, until it brightens up at the very end of the film, or during scenes of realization, like when Batman is on this bat signal rooftop, realizing that the Waynes have been exposed and therefore light being shined upon him, sort of uncovering this and enlightening him, so to speak.
The hell are you supposed to be?
This represents Gotham and especially the GCPD's lack of understanding for the Batman. They feel that he isn't capable of much, and they ultimately think he's just a freak in a costume, just some guy, and they think he's basically incapable of doing anything of any worth or helping anyone. And they think, because obviously they have so much experience in the GCPD or in crime, that they're going to be ultimately better than him, even though he has the passion and the means to get things done, figure things out, and uncover the mystery. But soon, obviously, they discover that, and they realize that he's the world's greatest detective.
I'm vengeance.
This is probably my favorite moment in the entire film. It's definitely the most badass moment in all of cinema history, and probably just in human history, quite frankly. It's so poignant, it's so brutal, but it also stands on its own and creates this different version of Batman, and it's just absolutely incredible. It's definitely what I was waiting for the most after watching the trailers, especially the first DC Fandom trailer. But to us, he's really telling us that he's not Batman yet. He's not evolved to that state. He doesn't understand himself, and he doesn't understand what he has to become yet. This is a physical manifestation of his anger, his goals, what he wants right now, and how his cessation of trauma has built up and how he uses his trauma, and also how he views himself. If you listen carefully as well, you can actually hear one of the gang members, and it could actually possibly be the young gang member, say it's him in a very scared manner. This could also be an extension of the last two analyses I just made, especially that of people realizing finally what the Batman is, what he represents at the end of the film. This symbolizes the end of the film, or could symbolize sort of towards the middle of the film, when Batman realizes that he has to rise up from the circumstances, you know, Alfred being almost killed, the corruption in the whole of the city, realizing that Thomas Wayne did something wrong, did something bad, and that he has to basically rise above these things and become his own person, but also realize that, you know, people are corrupt and are liars, you know, Carmine is a liar. And as this is sort of towards the middle of the scene, this would represent that and would parallel that rising and that transforming, and him stepping away and becoming more from the darkness of the situation, all the mental, emotional, and even physical fighting that he's had to do against the city, against the criminals, and just against the evil in the city. He needs to let go of his trauma, and he needs to not let it seize him in the way that it has. It's important to note the aggression from Batman here, but also the fact that he keeps getting hit. This represents, foreshadows, and sets up that Bruce is in his infancy in terms of combat, but most importantly, that he cares more about being brutal and vicious than he does being strategic. This could even represent the Venom scene, right, where Batman is still using his aggression, still using this built-up trauma and this brutal violence to get what he wants, just before he ultimately realizes he has to become more of a hero than he has been and use hope as opposed to violence. This, once again, as we just touched upon, represents the humanity within the villains and the evil of Gotham and their internal conflict, and that they actually are fighting within themselves. They don't want to actually hurt Batman per se, they just want more. They want something out of the situation that they're in, and they don't actually want to become criminals. They don't want to fight against anything else. They really just want power, money, anything that they can get their hands on. There's more and more and more, right? This represents his strategy and use of not only his gadgets and the tools at his disposal, as he does at the end of the film, venturing from simply being vicious, but also represents his use of, again, the Venom at the end of the film, but I think it could also represent the threat of electricity at the final point in the film. This obviously structure parallels that. So not only is this a physical threat, but it also opposes water, which is a symbol in this film of baptism or a rebirth, which is what's opposing and what's going against the water or going against the rebirth, him being more violent, being more aggressive. But it also could represent, towards the end of the film, his use of gadgets in a more productive and efficient way. For example, the grappling guns, best, like, such a fucking good scene. We're going to cover that definitely at some point. But, you know, also his use of the sort of sticky bomb gels and causes the sort of smoke cloud, which hopefully we'll get to see smoke pellets in the second installment. I also believe that this moment between Batman and the young gang member also represents the greyness we were talking about earlier, that all of the characters are quite similar but differ in what they do with their trauma and their pain. Riddler chooses to kill over his trauma. Catwoman also chooses to kill and thieve, whereas Batman chooses not to, yet they are all so similar.
Please don't hurt me.
What he says here and how he approaches Batman and how he sees Batman, the fear, really represents the final part of the film as well in terms of structure and the final fight. Especially the Riddler gang member that has been beaten to hell by Batman and then later calls himself Vengeance. For example, you see the person on the ground, which would either be the Riddler thug or just the random citizen who was a target of crime. He just gives him a sort of side look right here and then is forced to look up to something that's more important, whether that be physically or metaphorically or within himself as a character, as a person. These two are very similar and also represent that of the two versions of this character, Vengeance and Batman, and how one of them is like a birth and one of them is like a rebirth, one at the beginning of the film and one at the end of the film. This is a manifestation of that, and it also shows that no one understands him until he really tries to save those, does save those citizens. So this is a very important part of the scene and really convinces me, like it's the final nail in the coffin that convinces me this whole scene is a representation and a setup or a structural parallel to the rest of the film. Him looking up here is almost exactly mirrored to the scene where he declares that he has to become more. I mean, it's almost exactly the same shot, except that shot is a bit wider and it's obviously the angle is a bit different. But in terms of the imagery, it's very, very similar, right? I believe this also could represent what he's striving for and what he's focused on internally, emotionally, spiritually, mentally as well, and his journey through that. During the scene he's looking up at the bat signal, this is a representation of him focusing on being Batman, using this new persona to beat on criminals but also solve crimes and lock up other criminals. And in the Become More scene, he's looking up at a citizen who's obviously been through a lot with the flooding, watching them being lifted to a helicopter. This is now his focus, helping and saving people, making them feel safe, heard, seen, and becoming more of a hero. It's absolutely beautiful. But yeah, it honestly gets me really emotional each time. Sometimes absolutely crying because it's just so beautiful, you know, him consoling this person. You can just see in his eyes the empathy and just the compassion. I don't know, it's just so beautiful. But yeah, that is going to be the end of this part of Hidden Symbolism. Now, this is how the series is going to work. Basically, I'm going to have different sort of segments to the overall analysis, for example, Hidden Symbolism, and then there's going to be a visual element, sound design, and a bunch of different things, and you can basically just watch them all at once if you want to, but it's going to be segmented up. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this part. I've not seen a lot of the Batman analysis videos, but I'd like to think that I'm bringing something new to the table here. I'm bringing something fresh to it. If you're wondering, you know, you love the Batman so much, why don't you watch a lot? This is because I'm quite analytical and critical about people's opinions with the Batman because it's just so close to me, you know. I think it's perfection. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope this got you thinking. I hope this got you to be more introspective, analytical, theoretical about films and just see them in a more metaphorical way. I think it's really good to just train yourself to think in a certain way. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you all for the support as usual, and I'll see you out there neon hunting.